Storytime of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. So I never really liked my stepmom in the first place because she was a little controlling over my dad, and I just knew that she hated me and I really hated her too. But you know, my dad was in love and he seemed happy, so I didn't really say anything. And my dad would always take me to lunch on Saturdays and Sundays, and we'd have like a dad-daughter bonding day, I guess. And me and my dad were just super close. And every single weekend, me going to lunch with him would start an argument between them two because she said I was taking time away from them two. My dad really never chose sides, but I never really got involved in the relationship as much as I hated her because I just loved seeing my dad happy. Also, at this time, I was 15. And what I'm about to say next might sound just a little crazy and unbelievable, but I'm not sure who she was on the phone with. But while on the phone with somebody, she was talking about getting rid of me. Mind you, my mom had passed away when I was younger, and I really had no other family to go to. Now, this is where the story takes a turn for the worse and she tries to get rid of me. I'm running out of time looking for the crazy part too. Part 2 of how my stepmom got so jealous of me and my dad's bond that she plotted to kill me. Continuing on with the story, I don't know who she was on the phone with, but I overheard her on the phone saying that she was going to get rid of me. And honestly, I didn't really care and I didn't really think anything of it because I knew she was crazy, but I didn't think she was that crazy. So all of a sudden, she started making me breakfast. And I'm not a breakfast person. I can't eat right when I get up. So every time she would make me breakfast, I'd be like, thanks, but I'm not hungry. And she would get so mad. Like, so freaking mad. I'm not going to get into all the little details, but comes to find out, she was putting rat poison in my food. She had set up cameras in my room. And I don't know what kind of sense this makes. I think she's just crazy, but she started to hide snakes in my room and claim it was my fault that the snakes were coming in my room. Yeah, doesn't really make any sense. Once I told my dad and my dad got out of his little in love stage with her, he finally stepped up and said something to her. And she admitted that she wanted me dead. He eventually called the cops, and to this day, she is in jail for attempted murder. Oh, did I forget to mention the day that he broke up with her, she tried to stab me in the throat.
If you're ever driving late at night, don't do what they did. Two boys picked up a girl on the side of the road while they were on their way to a school dance. In the car, she kept saying that she was cold, so one of the boys gave her his jacket. But when the night ended and they were about to drop her off, the girl accidentally left with the jacket. So the boys said that they would just come back the next day to get it. But when they came back and knocked on her door, they discovered something that would make them question what is real and what isn't. An old woman opened the door and asked them who they were looking for. After talking to her for a while, it was revealed that the girl they found on the side of the road was her daughter. But the thing is, she had been dead for 12 years. She was killed in a car accident at the same street corner they first saw her. The old woman pointed to a cemetery down the road and said, "That's where we buried her." The boys didn't believe her at first. They'd spent the whole night with this girl, so they knew that she had to be real. But they went to the cemetery and saw the boy's jacket draped over a gravestone. And on the gravestone was the girl's name and the date of her death, exactly 12 years ago to the day.
If you can solve this riddle, you're a genius. There was this woman and she was a serial killer. She would take men on dates and then poison them and kill them. One day she goes on a date with you. Ooh, but she can't go through with it because she's so in love with you. Eventually, you two end up getting married and you buy a house together. When you buy the house, she claims the basement for her work and she says that you're not allowed to go down there. You say okay and you're happily married. But as time goes on, you get really curious and one day she leaves for work and you decide to go downstairs and see what's down there. When you go downstairs, it's pitch black and you reach around the walls to see if there's a light switch to turn on, but there isn't. As you're feeling around the room, there's a light bulb above you that is unscrewed a little bit. You screw it in a little bit more to turn on the light. Immediately, you see all the dead bodies that she's ever killed, and you're in shock as you're looking around for a while, but then you hear her car pull up in the driveway and she's home from work. You quickly unscrew the light bulb, run upstairs, and sit down. When she gets home, she goes downstairs to check on her dead bodies, and she immediately knew that you were in there. How did she know? Pause this video right now because I'm about to say the answer. It was because the light bulb was still hot.
When my parents decided to get a divorce, I chose to stay with my dad. He was more financially stable, and he also promised to take care of me in the future and help me go through college as long as I graduated. When my grandmother from my mother's side passed away, I received a $30,000 inheritance, and recently my grandfather from my father's side passed away and left me with $50,000 as well. I was also working part-time jobs, and with all of that, I was able to save enough to comfortably put me through my 4 years of school. One day, my mom surprised my stepsister and bought her a brand new car. I was kind of shocked because it was way out of their budget because I knew they were struggling financially. When I looked at my bank account, I saw that a majority of my money was missing. I have my mom on all of my accounts because she wanted to monitor to make sure I don't spend too much money. I never would have thought she would have taken this and paid for my stepsister's car. Her reasoning was that my stepsister had a brighter future and had a bigger possibility of going to an Ivy League school and providing for us in the future. I, a student who gets mostly B's and C's, would just take over the family business, so I didn't really need it, and I could always work in the future.
My best friend was toxic. Story time. Growing up, I had this best friend who we're gonna name Keisha. And since my mom died when I was a baby, Keisha's mom kind of stepped up and became a motherly figure to me. And even though I appreciated it, I don't think Keisha did. Because she would always make these rude comments like, she's not your real mom, or she doesn't love you as much as she loves me because I'm her actual daughter. And it really bothered me, but I chose to ignore it because I loved Keisha's mom like my own mom. So this one time on Mother's Day, I was at Keisha's house hanging out with her and her mom. And Keisha had this really bad attitude just because I was there. Her attitude was so bad that I didn't even want to be there. So eventually I asked if I could go home, but Keisha's mom said I didn't have to and not to let Keisha's attitude ruin our day. And when her mom said that, it really set her off. And she said something that I would never forgive her for. Keisha turns to me and opens up her disgusting mouth to say, "Your mother is dead. You should be spending Mother's Day at a cemetery."
Storytime Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on this date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, "I really need to go home." And he says, "Yeah, I'll drive you home." And she says, "Okay." So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, "Do you want to come in for some coffee?" And then he says, "Yeah, sure." So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave." And he's like, "Okay." And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, "Can you just stay on the line until the cops get there?" And then the cops get there and they're like, "The door is locked. Like, we don't think anyone's inside." And she's like, "I promise you, someone's inside my house. I can hear them." She says, "You have my permission to break down the door." So she's still up in her room, and then she hears the cops break down the door. And then she hears some rustling and some fighting. Part 2 of the Tinder story. So then after the cops break down the door, they go upstairs and they knock on her door, and they're like, "It's okay, we've got the guy, everything's fine." And they say to her, "We don't really want you to stay here tonight. We don't think that you should see what he's done." And when I say he, it's the guy that she went on a date with. And she's like, "No, I need to see what he's done." So she goes downstairs and she sees her kitchen wrapped all in plastic, and there's a saw and a hammer and a knife. And earlier when he came into her house for coffee, he set his keys down right next to her keys. And so when he left, he picked up both sets of keys. And that is how he got back into her house. And they tested her, like her blood and everything, and she wasn't supposed to wake up because of how many drugs were in her system, because on the date, he drugged her. And then I guess he was just planning on chopping up her body in her own kitchen. I don't know. Stay safe.
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day for my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon on a Tuesday.